We're off to Buenos Aires now on HTV for live coverage of the qualifying session of the Argentinian Grand Prix.
David Coulthard's been second best so far, overshadowed by McLaren teammate Mika Häkkinen. Can the Scot turn things round in Argentina? He'll have to be very mobile in qualifying. Welcome to the Buenos Aires Autodrome. We're all set for the qualifying hour of the Argentinian Grand Prix, round 3 in this year's World Championship. Hello, good afternoon. Up to now, it's been McLaren's roadshow. Häkkinen and Coulthard have looked in a different league in Australia and in Brazil. The rest are playing catch-up. But there's a genuine belief, particularly at Ferrari and at Williams, that they'll get a lot closer this weekend, and things will be very competitive indeed when we race in Europe later this month. But here in Argentina, David Coulthard has to show he can be a winner once again. And to do that, he's got to beat his teammate.
He's a very fast 29-year-old Finnish driver. That's about all I know about him.
He's good. I mean, he's better than he used to be.
It's not the ultimate working relationship, if I'm honest.
He has some weaknesses.
If you finish second and, you know, there's been something held back or whatever, and especially when you work within a team, then you can't help but feel a bit cheated.
In our team and in Formula 1, you cannot. There's no secrets. Everything is black and white.
At the moment, all I'm effectively trying to do is beat my teammate.
The pressure is on me to continue winning. Pressure on David to start winning.
You know, I gave him the win in Melbourne. He beat me fairly and squarely in Brazil. And I hope that I can get the win here in Argentina.
He's done pretty well so far. Quickest yesterday, second behind Michael Schumacher this morning. But Tony Jardine, what a really sort of different personalities in that McLaren team.
Yeah, chalk and cheese. There's no love lost there at all, and certainly the mind games have started now. But one's a sort of shy introvert. It's difficult to get him to smile, and then Coulthard is sort of the outgoing, bubbling personality that he is. But Coulthard went off to Miami while his mate Häkkinen went off to Punta del Este. Sorry if I spat at you there a little bit.
Uruguay, yeah.
He was, Häkkinen was concentrating in Miami just on him, just on training. No other job to do whatsoever. And in Jackie Stewart's words, he's got to get his mind together, and he's just been focusing on here. He knows he's got to turn it around. He likes this track, and so far, good news for Coulthard fans. He's been quicker than Häkkinen, so keep eating the shortbread.
Okay, thank you, Tony. Let's just take a look at the Constructors' Championship now. And, well, what a lead they have now. McLaren's maximum 32 points. It's already opened up a sizable 24-point lead over Williams. Williams, remember, they've been the dominant team of the decade. Don't, though, think the others have given up hope. Far from it. Here's James Allen.
Will McLaren win every race this year? Well, it may have looked that way in the opening races, but the signs are that the other leading teams are closing the gap. Ferrari believes they can split the McLarens here this weekend.
Yeah, I think we've got a good car, but not good enough. Yeah, McLaren, quite frankly, moved the goalposts over the winter, and you know, we've done a reasonable car, but it can never be a good car when somebody's beating it.
Michael Schumacher may have spent an afternoon with the Argentine junior soccer team, but he's only had one day off since Brazil. Ferrari have been flat out, testing for 4 days in Barcelona. They've got a new rear wing, and they've improved the balance of the car.
I'm not that optimistic to say I'm going to win that race, but I think the maximum it can happen is to drive in between the two.
Williams has done a lot of work to improve the back of their car. A serious lack of rear-end grip has left the world champion struggling to score points, let alone even beat McLaren.
Everybody wants to catch them, everybody wants to fight. You know, we don't want to fight for fifth, so we're not going to concentrate just trying to be 2/10 quicker so we can fight for fourth. You know, we'd rather take the risks and do some big setup changes to try and get closer, and then if it doesn't work, we'll be like in Brazil.
Alexander Wirtz's breathtaking move on Frentzen in Brazil raised hearts at Benetton, but they've got some way to go to squeeze as much out of their Bridgestone tyres as McLaren. Meanwhile, Jordan are coming from a long way back. They've added trendy little winglets in search of extra downforce around this twisty Buenos Aires circuit.
Well, this weekend in Argentina, Williams, Ferrari, indeed all the Goodyear teams will be hoping that this new front tyre here will help them close the gap on McLaren. It's about ½ an inch wider than the tyre with which they started the season, and that makes up for some of what's been lost with the introduction of these grooves. Now, there's no question that this tyre will help the cars get into the corners better. Forget about fancy electronic systems. If the Goodyear teams can just get the balance right between the front tyres and the rear tyres and the overall setup of the car, they'll take a big chunk out of McLaren's lead.
Thanks very much indeed, James. Now, here are a couple of the new tyres, Tony. Goodyear have been accused of falling behind Bridgestone this season. Here's their response.
Yeah, and they responded very quickly indeed, and here's the new front tyre here in contrast to the old narrower front. Now, the reason for the development of this is that Goodyear's rear tyre was extremely effective, and it put all the pressure on the front tyre, so the front end of the car was going away with lots of understeer. That's the reason for this. At first, the teams were worried about the aerodynamics with a wider front tyre slowing the car down the straight. Luckily, that hasn't been the case. But they've had to make narrower front suspension and wider wheels, but they've all done that. Villeneuve says, great, now we've got a tyre we can lean on, we can stand on it in the corners. So that's working really very well indeed, but you can't use this in the wet. It could be wet this afternoon, couldn't it, in qualifying, but it's lethal, very hard compound. Despite the little grooves, they'll all be crashing like they would this morning, trying to use this in the dam.
Absolutely, and we'll have a look at one or two of those spills in a few minutes' time. But now let's concentrate on the Argentinian Grand Prix. It's been a pretty good race, this, for British drivers over the years. Damon Hill won here in '95 and '96. Eddie Irvine had a great drive here last season in the Ferrari. He finished up there on the podium. Let's call in Martin Brundle.
The first corner saw lots of action last year. Michael Schumacher recovering from a bad start, only to run into Rubens Barrichello, who buries the throttle. Look at the blue smoke pouring from the rear tyres. Schumacher runs back to the pits, hoping for a red flag, but only a pace car. Hill and Alesi having a little kiss into the first corner, but luckily they were both able to carry on. Not so lucky for the Jordans.
Fisichella and Schumacher colliding, and they were second and third.
Ralf Schumacher coming off best from that one. Villeneuve taking an unusual race strategy. 3 pit stops, which put him back on the track for the final run to the flag, just ahead of Eddie Irvine's Ferrari. Irvine pulled out all the stops, but he couldn't make the pass. Villeneuve taking the win from Irvine and Ralf Schumacher on this, one of the slowest racetracks of the year.
Well, those drivers are obviously enjoying themselves. Personally, I hated the place. I could never get in the groove, find the setup, find the line around the circuit. You've seen the pit straight behind me, coming here into turn 1, always locking up the wheels. It's bumpy under braking, then it's tight and dusty. We've just seen the accident in the first corner last year. The old circuit carries on. The new circuit, well, it's almost as if you're turning onto a B road. The Ascari curve, 160 miles an hour flat out in top gear, but that's the easy bit. It all starts going wrong right here when the cars hit the ground. The rear wheels become airborne. Your spine is compressed, your lungs are evacuated, but you must keep your foot on the throttle if you can.
Another tricky section is just after the Viborita chicane. Over the curbs, the rear tyres get unloaded, and it's very, very easy to spin off into the gravel trap. It even caught out reigning world champion Jacques Villeneuve.
The Senna S, you'll see lots of drivers locking the unloaded inside left-hand tyre on the way in, then falling downhill, the slowest part of the racetrack, just 45 miles an hour. It opens up on the exit, but there's a big surface change. It's a question of hurry up and wait. Be careful with the throttle. Another important corner, Hokia, a 180-degree right-hander, effectively the last before the start-finish line. On the way in, be very careful not to outbrake yourself. Then just 50 miles an hour on the apex before coming to the exit. In fact, right where I'm standing, you've got to apply 750 horsepower. Even in the dry, drivers are fighting the cars.
I wouldn't say it's a real man's circuit, you know, it's a little bit tight and twisty, but nevertheless it's challenging.
It's under the category of Mickey Mouse circuit, very tiny, like a go-kart track.
Il circuito io lo conosco da quando sono cominciato a correre nelle categorie minori, circuito penso che per la Formula 1 un po' lento, ma per me è una bella pista.
There's no challenging corners at all. It's very slow on first and second gear corners, and it's very easy to learn. Anybody can drive through it, so it's not really good.
We have very tight corners, and really have to work hard to get the car pointing in the right direction when you come out of the corner. Otherwise, you lose a lot of time.
They're talking about aerodynamic and suspension setup. This is the front suspension of the Stewart. What's it made up of? You've got the lower wishbone and the top wishbone holding the upright, which also carries the wheel bearing and spindle. I could break that with my foot. It's only designed to carry a load in a certain direction. It's very weak in others. Then you've got the steering arm, which turns the whole upright. After that, you've got the push rod, which on this car twists a torsion bar. We can't film this because Stewart don't want the other teams to see what it looks like under there. Some teams carry a shock absorber and spring. The total suspension travel is less than ½ an inch. In fact, there's more travel in the tyre itself when it deflects. They can also adjust the camber. They lean the top of the tyre in. This is exaggerated. It's about 2 degrees on the car. Then they toe the front tyres out, pointing them out like this, about ½ a degree. This makes the tyre bite the circuit and gives the driver the immediate response he needs.
Martin Brundle can't stand it. We've had 14 offs today, would you believe? It's a bit like a sort of oily ice rink, isn't it?
Very, very bumpy, very low grip, and they put a lot of wing on to force the car down onto the track. And yesterday they were showing the sort of difficulties they're having. This was the installation lap. The first few laps, Alesi lost concentration and punted Johnny Herbert.
Two Saubers together?
Off. Yeah, two Saubers together. Broke his steering column in that accident. Heinz-Harald Frentzen tried to do the tango with Esteban Tuero, and he afterwards, because he's got a Spanish mother, Heinz-Harald, he afterwards spoke in Spanish to Esteban to apologise. You remember we asked Esteban, what did he say? He said, I don't know, I didn't understand him.
Lots of attention on Tuero, but this is Häkkinen.
Yeah, Häkkinen does not like this circuit, so that's good news if you're a Coulthard fan. And he was having brake problems yesterday, and off he went sliding away. So he says it's going to be a big challenge for me.
Coulthard today, Tony.
Yeah, we're talking about just about every driver, every car has spun off today because it was damp. And they're on these dry groove tyres, I said, and the margin, the limit is very, very, very fine indeed. And they've all been finding the limit. Everyone's gone off. Damon went off 3 times.
Okay, I'm sure there'll be more of the same to follow in qualifying. Right then, Damon Hill and Jordan very much in the spotlight this weekend. More on that now from Louise Goodman.
That's right, Jim. It's been a pretty dismal start to the season for Jordan Grand Prix. They've not really been in the running at either of the first 2 races so far, but things are starting to look up. They've made some changes to the car for this weekend, and fingers crossed, seems to have done the trick. Here's a man who can tell us more, my old mate Eddie Jordan. Eddie, tell us about these changes. What have you done to the car?
Well, we've had a good look at where we were going from an aerodynamic point of view, and Gary has come up with a couple of different things that work very efficiently in the wind tunnel, and may not be the nicest things in the world to look at, but they seem to give good downforce for very little drag, so that's a significant improvement, I have to say.
It does seem to have made a difference. Does that mean there's a much bigger feeling of optimism this afternoon?
No, I wouldn't want to go that far. I mean, we started off badly, if you so to speak, in the start of the first 2 races, and there's a fair bit of catching up to do. So naturally we're going to come across things like this, that we just make sure that we build on where we are at the moment and try and just make the improvement.
We'll keep our fingers crossed for you. Back to you, Jim.
Thanks very much indeed, Damon Hill, 5th quickest this morning. Okay, here we are then in Buenos Aires, where it takes 2 to tango. They serve massive steaks, guaranteed to give every vegetarian a nightmare. It's a great city, though. Buenos Aires qualifying is just a couple of minutes away. It's been cool and cloudy for most of the week here. We've had overnight rain as well. Rain is in the air again. Right, they'll have a cake in Formula One. Any reason, they'll make one and then ruin it. Jacques Villeneuve's 27th birthday on Thursday is a good excuse. His race engineer, Jock Clear, obviously didn't send him a card. Qualifying comes next.